This is Faith in Your Recovery. Welcome to the battle. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, we're here for you and with you. I'm your host, Randy Davis, former pastor, founder, and executive director of A Better Life, Brianna's Hope. We're a participant-driven, faith-based, compassion-filled support and recovery movement for those battling the battle with substance use disorder addiction. We're excited. This is episode 6 of Faith in Your Recovery, and we believe in the benefit of offering you all things recovery. We do that in an effect and with the hope and the plan that one of these times, one of these episodes is going to click with you in a way where your life's going to want to change, where you're going to seek a better life and a better way. So welcome to Faith in Your Recovery. I'm excited today to have a friend with me, Brian Blevins. I've known Brian, 6 years here? 6 years?
It's coming up on 6 years here really shortly.
Yeah, that's neat. And Brian has a friend, Dennis, with him. Welcome, Dennis.
Nice to be here. It's a miracle.
Awesome. We're going to hear some of that miracle here in a little bit. We want to hear that story, and we want you folks out there to know that there is hope beyond hope for you. There's opportunities, and there's so many doors and ways you can make this journey back to recovery. But Brian, let's you and I just kind of hone in here together for a minute or two. I'm aware of a lot of your story, a lot of the struggle, the victory, and the joy of your life and those good things that are going on now. But why don't you fill the folks in with just a few of those details of what it was like pre-recovery for you?
Okay, so pre-recovery for me was, it was just honestly a train wreck, just waiting to happen. I think I started dibbling and dabbling in drugs and alcohol 14, 15 years old, and it just really progressed to cocaine, and then from cocaine it went to prescription medication, and then from prescription medication it went to methamphetamine, and after methamphetamine I landed at heroin, which was my drug of choice anyway. So through my past, I'm a 4-time convicted drug felon, so multiple felonies. Really, the consequences and the total hopelessness and what that looked like really landed me in recovery. So the 24th of this month right here, I'll be 6 years totally clean, set free from drugs and alcohol. So, that's just a part of my journey. And it wasn't so much how I was raised, because I was raised in a good home. I knew right from wrong. I was class president in high school. I was most varsity letters. So addiction was not in my family, how, a lot of people say, it's inside of us. Well, it wasn't inside of me and my family, so that's not my story. But on November 24th, 2015, which was my father's birthday, and it was also Thanksgiving, I was arrested with 15 grams of heroin, basically facing 18 years in prison. They could have charged me with habitual drug felon, and ended up going to jail, and that's really where my road to recovery began, and really where I met the Lord.
Brian, as you go back, you were talking there about that length of time. How long were you into addiction, active addiction?
Probably nearly 25, 27 years.
Can you in any way point back to that moment where you knew you were in over your head and that it had a hold of you and, You almost made that submission to it, at least at that moment.
So for me, I would lie to myself and honestly say it didn't have a hold of me because, I sold drugs as much as I did them. So, I had stuff. I wasn't sticking a needle in my arm and, I snorted my drugs. So I always thought that I was in control, of what I did. So I would always justify everything with I'm still employed. I have a house. I have a car. So I really didn't look that I had a problem, and it wasn't until I became addicted to heroin. And that's when, one time I stole my mom's credit card, because I was broke and had every intentions of paying this credit card back, and which is silly. And, my mom and dad, they had caught me in doing that, and they were going to send me to jail, and basically they gave me the option to go to rehab, and that was in 2013. So I think in 2013 I really felt like things were starting to get a little more heavier. But when I hit opiates and I became physical dependent to the drugs that I was doing, I couldn't stop because the level of sickness that my body would go through, vomiting, diarrhea, cold chills, just how horrible you would feel. And it's like you had to have that drug so you didn't feel so bad. So you would almost do absolutely anything not to be sick.
I've heard that story. I've witnessed that battle, and I hope our folks just heard that from you. We're going to come back to you here in a few moments, Brian, but before we do, go ahead and introduce me as well as our listeners to Dennis, your friend here, and then we'll have Dennis share some of that parallel from his life of what you just shared.
All right. So I'll introduce everyone to my good friend, Dennis Wise. And I met Dennis. So I'm a peer support specialist, and I work in Grant County. Worked there for nearly 3 years. It's been a part of my journey, and I found that helping other people definitely helps me in my recovery. So I work for Grant Blackford Mental Health, and we have a crisis center at Grant Blackford Mental Health, and it's called Cornerstone. And Cornerstone is mental health if somebody wants to commit suicide, but it's also somewhat of a detox facility. So my first encounter with Dennis was probably, 3 years ago, Dennis.
Yes, I'd say about around there. Yeah.
And so kind of share that story of how we met.
Okay. Well, I definitely was on methamphetamines. I was shooting up a couple grams a day, and I had lost my mind. I was ready to just give up, and I was I was seeing things, hearing voices, and so I decided to check myself in there instead of giving up. Something told me, and I believe it was the Lord brought me to that place, and I couldn't get out of my head that these things were attacking me, and I was just scared to death, and I just lay in a bed and cover my head, and I got a knock on the door, and there was Brian. He came in and introduced himself, and I told him what I was going through, and for the first time, he told me, those things are real, that it's the Lord working in your life, trying to open your eyes, and I believe that to this day, and he's a great person ever since, and he's never given up on me, no matter what I've done. He's got the Lord in his heart, and he's doing right, and I trust in him, and I believe the Lord has put him in my life to set me free of my addiction and my demons.
Dennis, tell us a little more of your history and your struggle with drugs. Some of those losses, some of those moments that you just spoke of being surreal.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of a total opposite story of Brian. I grew up in a home in Marion, Indiana my whole family were I was raised by a drug dealer, and my grandfather, he was an alcoholic, and my mother, she was, a drug addict, alcoholic, and it was just common, it was just something that unfortunately I was probably bound to end up a part of, and it's just, and I did, eventually, I fought it off for a long time when I was young. I didn't really like drugs because I saw what it did to my family. And, eventually I only have like 2 family members left from addiction and suicide. I've lost basically my whole family, and that kind of sent me down the wrong road. But I'm not mad about that. To this, at this day, it's kind of an eye opener. Like maybe that was, God has a plan for everyone, and I had to go through all this pain and suffering to realize that there's a better way. If there's bad, there's good, And the last 2 years I've spent on the street shooting up methamphetamine. I decided to get off the opiates. I was hooked on opiates for 20 years right here in Anderson. And I lost, 3 families, 3 sons that I hadn't been there for. I've been sent to prison. I've done 10 years. And over, just from my addiction to opiates and things like that, I couldn't get right, and I believe it's because I didn't have the Lord in my heart and my life. And I've been through so much in the past 2 to 3 years that it's just, I can't deny anymore. There's another side, and it's opened my eyes to that.
Yeah, wow, that's heavy stuff. And let me ask you both, and you're both, more than welcome to answer one or the other. Were there times where you didn't care whether tomorrow came or not?
Oh, yeah. It was terrible. I just didn't care about anything myself. At the most, I didn't care about myself. Only thing I cared about was getting something to not think about what I was going through.
The next fix or hit.
That's all I cared about.
Yeah. Brian, how's that fit for you?
So I've been filled with hope for the last 6 years, and my passion is to love people and help people, and I'm pretty radical in doing those things. So when I see somebody hurting and struggling, I know from my personal experience where they are. So in Dennis's case, Dennis was going to the methadone clinic, and so he was addicted to methadone, as well as using methamphetamine and common and those other drugs, which really affects our thinking and in our mind. But one thing about methadone is once you start going to the clinic and you get above 30 to 50 milligrams, you can't find a rehab facility absolutely anywhere that's going to get you in and help you. So it was really difficult for me to see Dennis going through what he was going through, because there absolutely was like no doors to help him through treatment wise. So, him sitting here with me right now and getting to go to treatment is nothing more than a miracle, because it was almost 30 days ago, almost to this day, that I tried to take Dennis to rehab, and we were going to go do a medical detox, and Dennis was in a vehicle with me at the gas station and told me he was going to go into the restroom, and he went into the restroom, and Dennis disappeared out of my vehicle. 10 minutes later, I'm like, where'd Dennis go? And he left his clothes and everything right there in my car, and Dennis just vanished. And I deal with those things, and I love Dennis, and it really wasn't Dennis, that I'm sitting here right now. It was somebody that was hurt, broken, lost, confused, addicted. So it was a few days later, and my coworker had I had went to work in the morning to do my notes at Marion General Hospital, and she sent me a text message, and it was Dennis Wise picture and he had been arrested, and under the arrest it said he had to sit in jail for 30 days. And if people could look up his photo and see, I mean, he looks like he was near death. And when I saw that picture, I just thank God that he was arrested. I mean, I looked at that and I really did. I said, thank you, Lord, because I knew he was getting ready to sit down and go through a real bad detox, but that was the only way that I was going to be able to get him the help that he needed, and here we are.
That's awesome. Those kind of moments and that kind of friendship that sees you through, and we all need that because we burnt so many bridges, right?
Yes.
And I heard you talking, and I don't want to hit on a tender spot, but I mean, you've lost a lot of family members, as I heard you say, suicide, overdose, and the complications thereof.
I had to pull the life support plug on my mother the last time I got released from jail because, and I'm a single child raised with, that was my best friend, and that didn't help at all.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I've been through it, but things happen for a reason. God's got a plan for me, and I realize that now. So
good. And we'll get to that plan here in a little bit because we want to hear more about that. Brian, as I reflect back on our relationship, I know for a fact that we've lost a lot of mutual friends over the years to overdose death, to drugs, to alcohol, and the complications therewith. Yes?
Yeah, so one of the most difficult things of recovery is knowing other people that aren't going to make it. I mean, you look at statistics and overdoses and fatalities, it's just crazy, and I seem to put myself right in the middle of those things. So my relationship with A Better Life, Brianna's Hope, is when I was incarcerated, NA and AA came in and kind of showed me, about sponsorship, about the 12 steps, and then I kind of, they did a higher power, and I really believe that my higher power was Jesus Christ. So, I kind of went the church route. So I got into Celebrate Recovery. And when I got into Celebrate Recovery, that's when I was introduced to A Better Life, Brianna's Hope. And this is right when you opened up, your first chapter right there. So right when it all started, a few months after, I got to start coming to your guys' meetings, and your meetings really inspired me that there was more than one way to recover. And the more meetings and the more relationships and the more healthy relationships, because it's unhealthy relationships ultimately that we stay involved in. And the hardest thing to do is to turn your back on people that you've known forever. So if you're in the addiction world and you're selling drugs or using drugs, the only people that you start hanging out with are like-minded people. So, you're going to, you lose them people. I've lost so many friends. One of my best friends, Bon Funkhauser, that was 3 years clean. And that young man was a walking miracle. And I lost Bon, and that really shook me. It really did. And just last week, I lost a coworker that had been 4 years clean, and her husband was 3.5 years clean, and they found both of them dead a week ago. So I'm just coming off of a loss of a team member, and it's just... I'm just numb, and to work in the recovery community, and I take it so serious, and I take relapse so serious because the next time could be your last time, because they're putting fentanyl in methamphetamine, they're putting fentanyl in vape pens, they're putting fentanyl in every single thing, and you just never know what you're putting into your body. So it's not like, the older days of me smoking pot and drinking beer, it's like the younger generation, they're sticking a needle in their arm. They're doing drugs that we don't even know, like, what is in the drug. So it's like the generation that's going on now, what we're dealing with is true pandemic.
I understand that fentanyl is like 50 times stronger than heroin. Heroin is like 4 times stronger than anything else you're going to buy off the shelf. And of course, you know, those dealers and those in the lab, they could care less about a Brian or a Dennis other than in dollar signs.
Absolutely.
And so that's that effort to get to you. As we reflect back, we've heard a lot of where you've been and the struggles and the losses that went with that. I'd like to challenge both of you to tell us what you think your lights on moment was. That moment where you decided, I want a better life for me. And just share that for a moment, please.
Yes, that definitely was this 30 days. About 3 days before I got out, I was still going through my withdrawal, which, you know, it takes a good month or two to get off of methadone. And I was just laying there going crazy. They couldn't even keep me in a normal cell block with people. I was just so mean and just didn't care about nothing and freaking out. I've lost my mind from the drugs and the detoxing, and they put me in the hole by myself. I believe it was part of God's plan. I got in there and I was just still going crazy and just couldn't handle it no more. And like mentally, I wanted to just not be here, not even exist anymore. And and all of a sudden, man, it came out of me. I said, spare the rod, spoil the child. They didn't know where that come from. It's like, what? And I believe it was God instilled that and put that in my mind to realize I had to go through this to get to the good, It opened my eyes. And that's when I just, all of a sudden I said, Lord, I'm not trying to make deals with you, but take this from me, please take this from me. I'm yours, no matter what, I'm yours. Whether you do or don't, I know you're real, and I know you're going to take this from me. And all of a sudden that day, my mind calmed down, and guards told me, hey, just relax, man. They're not even supposed to do this. You're leaving tonight for sure. Don't worry about nothing. Just lay down. We're not even changing your laundry out. You're good. And I just laid there in peace.
Awesome.
For the first time in a month, you know what I mean? In years, really.
You say, you know what I mean? No, I don't. I can't imagine that futility, that pain, that discomfort, that battle. It felt like in your
torture.
Mind and heart.
I felt like I was tortured
I
that
respect
whole time.
That totally.
And I made it through for a reason. I believe there's a bigger and better life for me and a path that I can help other people. Eventually, I can through him. Yeah.
We'll go to that in a minute. Kind of that next step kind of thing. Brian, that lights on moment for you in your life where it just clicked and you knew.
So, for me, I was laying in the drunk tank and incarcerated at Blackford County Jail, and I was overwhelmed with shame, guilt, and condemnation, and I wanted to end my life. So I came up with a plan to kill myself while I was in the Blackford County Jail, and I thought about diving off of a toilet. I thought about hanging myself, how I was going to do that, and I was really scared that those ways wouldn't work. So I thought about, I'm just going to starve myself. I'm not going to eat, and I'm not going to drink any fluids, and I know what that will do to my body. And so 9 or 10 days had went by, and my parents had sent someone to come and visit me at the jail, and in that visit they had to physically pick me up and help me walk down the hallway because I was vomiting and diarrhea. I was really sick. I was using a lot of opiates, so my withdrawal was very, very extreme, and I wasn't cleaning myself up. So when they led me to this room, here sits a gentleman. His name was Henry Long. Long. And Henry Long looked at me and he said, Brian, he said, if you died today, where would you go? And man, I'm going to tell you what, I did not tell anyone I was going to kill myself. So for him to ask me those first words about where would I go, and I really thought about that. You know, I believe in heaven and I believed in hell, and I really processed in that moment that, you know, I was frightened because I knew I wanted to die, and I knew that, you know, there was no light in my life. I was absolutely hopeless, and he really, you know, ministered to me in that room. I gave my life to Christ. I went back to my jail cell, and I was covered in rashes and hives, my whole body, and I went inside and took a shower. They allowed me to bathe, and I remember putting my hands on the wall and water coming down on my head, and I said, God, I said, if you're real, because I needed the real deal. I'm facing forever in prison, you know, the rest of my life away from my family. I can't carry this baggage anymore. If you're real, just please take it from me and be with me. And I said, I'll go anywhere, I'll say anything, and I'll do anything, and I'll give you all the praise, honor, and glory. And it was from that time that miracles started happening in my life almost immediately, to where I witnessed hives and rashes like come off of my body. So I personally witnessed supernatural things. I had a back disease, anxiety disorder, major depression. I was on disability, and God healed me from all of those ailments. So He showed me how real that he was, and I made a covenant and a decision when I was in jail that I was going to pursue him. And in my last 6 years, that's what my life has looked like. It's been a total pursuit of hope and healthiness, and I came to where I'm able to give that to someone else.
That's what I was thinking. You say you've been in total pursuit of it personally, but you've shared it just as much as you've sought it. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've been given several platforms to speak on, and I started a ministry called the Hope House in Hartford City, and it's a recovery ministry where people, they come in and enjoy a meal, and we have a worship team, and then we share a testimony. So really it was inspired a lot, Randy, by what you were doing with A Better Life, Brian is Hope. And I really just wanted to start something different, Christ-centered in Blackford County. So you have been a true inspiration in my recovery in A Better Life, Brian is Hope. I've been invited to probably at least 20 different chapters, and have been blessed to share my testimony with several chapters. I've got to share, across the state of Indiana. I've been on the 700 Club, a couple TV shows. I've been on podcasts and radios and in a few magazines, and it's never been about me. It's always been about the one who helped me and heal me. And I've never put myself on a platform and thought that I'd have done anything, because my choices and decisions always got me in trouble. My choices and decisions led me to destruction, led me to sin. So, learning about Christ and what freedom is, it's true humility and really giving him the praise that he deserves. And that's what I try to stay focused on, that he's inside of me, he's speaking through me. And when we show up and we kill this thing called the flesh, and we enter into a spiritual mindset that, miracle signs and wonders follow those who believe. And I believe that thing, and I witness that thing, and I testify about those things so other people can hear what I'm saying. And he shows up 100% of the time.
Let's just say, as you both step out the door, there's someone outside the door that's struggling much like you guys have are pretty much in the place you used to be. Obviously, your answer is going to be God. I get that, and indeed it should be. Next to God, what do you tell them? What kind of advice do you give them for their next right step? Well, you take it with God, but what should that step be?
So a lot of people don't want to hear about Jesus and God because that's not where they're at. They're in darkness, and I don't pressure anyone to believe what I'm believing. I'm just trying to love someone, so they say, what's different about Brian? So someone needs to get into treatment. Residential treatment is what I recommend for absolutely anyone that doesn't have any tools or coping skills. So there's 28-day treatment facilities, and it takes 21 days to form a habit. So they try to get someone in the habit of doing anything healthy and trying to figure out medications. There's mental illness. There's a lot of things that people struggle with. So it's really getting someone into a safe environment to where they have therapists and doctors that could look at everyone individually to see what the needs of the individual that's standing in front of me are. I'm not a therapist and I'm not a doctor, but I know the ones to refer you to.
That's the key.
Yeah, networking.
We don't have to know it all. We've just got to know them all. And pass it on.
Yeah.
There's more pride in giving somebody over to someone who can help them than to think it's got to be me. Okay? I can maintain my pride when I help move you forward for your sake instead of trying to move me forward for my sake.
Absolutely.
So it's about the end there. Same thing to you, Dennis. What would be the advice you'd give this individual outside the door here?
Absolutely turn to recovery. At least go to a meeting and give it a chance and meet some people. And surround yourself in recovery, and there's somebody going to tell you, hey, you need rehab. You know what I mean? You could die today. You could die in 5 minutes from now. You leave this meeting, you do what you do, and it could kill you. You never know, or you could just drop and have a heart attack, and like you said, where are you going to go? So why waste time? Don't waste time. Do it now.
One of the things that struck me about this morning, just so you folks, our listeners out there know, Brian and I had this scheduled to be together. I had no idea Dennis was going to be with him today. So one of you tell us why you're here, Dennis. You do that, or Brian? Go ahead, please.
Now since I got released from prison, I decided, to stick with what my guns were, loaded for, is to get recovered and get in Christ. And I got released at midnight, and I had nowhere to go. I had places to go, but they were the wrong places. So I decided to just freeze my butt off all night and wait on the mission to open and get a hold of Brian. And I went and got
let me interrupt you a minute. You said you got released at midnight when?
3 days ago.
3 days ago. Okay. I just want to keep folks on the same page.
I'm really fresh in this. I'm a baby in my recovery. Yes.
Okay.
But I've been through so much, and it's been going on so long, and I've tried so many times, but I have in my heart that this is it, man. I'm done trying. I'm doing. And Brian has stuck by me, and somehow we were back together again, and I'm on my way to rehab. As soon as I leave here, he didn't, it just worked out that, he somehow I came here to do this, and I believe it was something just to may strengthen my
I want you to repeat that again. You're headed to rehab when?
As soon as I leave here. I'm going 5 hours to Glidden Woods, and I hear it's a great place, and I'm excited.
We're excited for you, and excited that, God has brought the two of you together in this way, and that he continues to reconnect you, because we understand, as most people do, that sober or clean or clear is not the opposite of addiction, but relationships,
Yes, it's key.
community. And you guys have that relationship, and you knew where to turn. And we all need somebody like that in our lives, and we all need to be that somebody in the lives of others. I'm sure along the way you've had your doubters, you've had those naysayers, your challenges, but when your heart and your mind come together in it and Christ leads all of that, then you're ready. I hear the determination of what you're saying.
Yeah.
We want you to hold that determination. And,
Me too.
after that part of your recovery, we all understand recovery is a constant journey. Yes. Yeah, there's no destination in this, correct?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, once you get through this step, we'd like to have you back and,
sure.
see where you are and see what that next right step's going to be.
Be awesome.
Brian, one of the questions I'd had for you was to share with us what you're doing now. You did that there at one time, but is there anything else you'd like the folks out there to know that you can help them with, or maybe even how to get in contact with you or those that your office or whatever the labeling should be?
Sure. So I've been with the CORE program, which is the Community Opioid Response Endeavor at in Grant County, and there's a website on Facebook that has our number. So I meet with individuals in the hospital, anyone going to the hospital with a substance use disorder issue. We have a team that will meet you right in the emergency room, and what we try to do is share with you right there in the ER or critical care or whatever floor of the hospital that there's hope and there's treatment. One thing personally, I've in the last 3 years probably taken nearly 300 people in my car myself to rehab, which, I take people all the time, but cutting barriers of people to go, insurance is a big deal. So, helping people get insurance, just putting people in your car and getting them there and then picking them up and being a follow-up. So I also was the life change director at the Grant County Rescue Mission for a year and a half. So I worked 2 jobs, for a long time, really helping people that were lost, hurting, and broken. So working 2 jobs, and I had a baby with my wife. I had to kind of step away from working 2 jobs to be at home more. So I accepted a position as a supervisor at the Grace House in Grant County, which is a transitional sober living home. So when somebody's hurting and struggling and they're physically dependent, they need detox to be separated from their drug of choice, so they're not going to be sick out there running around getting to make themselves feel better. We send them to residential treatment, which is, nearly a 30-day treatment program that gives them time to be separated and have their body and mind heal up a little bit. They come back after that and they want to follow up with IOP or other, therapy, individual, whatever that looks like. But sober living is a big deal, because if we're sending people to treatment and then we're putting them back in the same environment, we know that just doesn't work, because you can't get healthy in an environment that you are just sick in. So you need a healthy environment. You need to surround yourself with something totally foreign and different, and that's where sober living or transitional housing comes into play, and it gives people ability to be held accountable. So I work in the problem-solving courts as well. So I've been to the last 3 national drug court conferences. And I also work in reentry court with men who get out of prison. So I get to mentor people, and I've been really good at networking. And like Randy said, not me helping, but finding the help for that individual, because, I'm a pretty busy person, and I deal with a whole lot of people, and it's very time consuming, and it can be overwhelming if I'm really not networking, the way that I should be networking. So, getting someone where they need, that's where we fall short. We fall short in housing. We fall short in where somebody's going to go. We can do detox, we can do treatment, we can do sober living, but the need, that is the number one need anywhere, is someone needs a safe place to stay, and the safe places to stay just aren't out there. So there's only 11 beds where I'm at, and there's a waiting list of so many people. The Hope Houses, transitional housing in Grant County, they have them for men and women. So I've seen tremendous strides in the county that I'm in, but we need this in absolutely every single county, because the need far exceeds what is there. So we're getting there, and we're making progress, but it's very slow progress for the need. And I'm somebody, I don't like to talk about communities or counties, because I look at myself and I say, what can I do? I can talk about what's wrong, and I can talk about what's right, but if I'm not trying to help in being a solution and coming up with solutions for other people, I can become a part of the problem by just trying to talk about who's doing good and who's not doing good. So for me, I try to focus on what's in front of me. I can be a solution. I can be that change in a community to help just talk about stigma and what's going on, and we're not those people, and I think more and more people are seeing addiction. It's in doctors, lawyers. It doesn't discriminate, and it's not a cultural disease or whatever we want to label it as. But when we don't have the housing to meet the needs, it's really, you're just a hamster on a wheel.
That housing's going to be that final piece. We've seen recovery opportunities open up multi places, and those opportunities have grown. But that housing, I just had someone here on an earlier episode, that was their key for the future, was the idea with it. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to give both of you the opportunity here to share one more thing you'd like to share, and then our engineer Eric has some questions for us that he's going to give us, and together we'll do our best to come up with an answer. So just kind of give us a closing statement of a sort, and then we'll go to Eric and have him give us those questions.
If you don't want to go to a hospital or something, like I said, just go to a meeting. Well, the rule is there, and they abide by it. The newcomer is the most important person, and they're going to lead you in the right direction. You find somebody that's got a lot of sobriety in there and speak with them, and I'm sure they got numbers to call, people to talk to like Brian. It's all there. There's an opportunity no matter what. There's a few different ways to find help. Just ask for it, and I know God will bless you with it.
Thank you.
That's about it.
Thank you, Dennis. Brian.
And my closing thing is people, places, and things. If you cannot change people, places, and things in your life, it will not work, I promise.
That's key. That's as basic as it gets and as complicated as it can be, for sure. Thank you both. I'll have one more for you here when we get ready to finalize this. But Eric, would you give us those questions you said you've received from some of our listeners?
Hey, guys. This is for Brian and Dennis. If you could write a letter to yourself back when you were a little kid, what would it say? Or if you have children and you could sit down and write a letter and hand it to them, what would it say? And Brian, I had another question for someone that had been in recovery longer. How long is it taking you to heal some of the relationships in your life from back when you were using, and all the things that come with it?
To the second part of the question of the healing of the relationships, my father came to me 2 years when I was sober, and he came up to me and he said, "Son, I finally don't have to worry about you anymore. I don't have to worry about that phone call in the middle of the night. I don't have to worry about where you're at or what you're doing." And we're talking 2 years into going to meetings every day and being plugged in. So, I had a thing called sorryitis, and I was always sorry, but there was never any action behind what I was speaking. So I think somebody that's in recovery and they really show by their actions greater than their words. Actions speak a lot louder than what we're speaking. So I had to really prove myself through my actions to every single person around me before, people started seeing there's something different about Brian today. He's not the same person that he used to be, because it's in his morals and his integrity, and that doesn't happen overnight. That's a long journey, because there's eyeballs looking at us. There's still eyeballs looking at me, probably wondering, if I'm going to fail, what's this, really going to look like. So you just have to be patient and really not worry about a bridge being restored or a relationship being restored, because you need to focus on yourself. You need to focus on your recovery and why you're there, because we can make a whole lot of excuses not to move forward in relationships and not being restored fast enough. I see as one of the biggest, barriers of somebody, grabbing a hold of that freedom. So it's just, if I tell anyone, stay in your lane, your lane is your lane. You can't focus on everything else, because you're going to lose out on what the problem is. And the problem's you. It's not all those relationships and everything else. I had to look in the mirror and say, Brian, you're the problem. You're the one that did all this. And forgiveness is hard. I could forgive other people, but I couldn't forgive myself for not being a parent. I couldn't forgive myself for, not being a son to my family. So I really had to look at myself in Jekyll and Hyde and say, the guy on drugs, he's basically, what he is, but the guy that's not on drugs is really a good person. The guy not on drugs is kind, caring, and compassionate and full of love. So when I got to the point to where, hey, I can forgive the person that's not on drugs, and I'm not the person on drugs anymore. So when I just put that guy to death, and I was promised a new life. So when I was promised a new life, that's what I was going after. So in a new life, sometimes we have to let go of relationships and those things around us, but it happens through forgiveness and learning to love yourself, and that's another full episode.
For certain. Brian, go back to that other question as well. What's that letter you'd write to your young self or to your child today?
So my son wrote me a letter, Dad, please stop using drugs. And, I tried everything, and if I was going to write a letter to myself, it would be, don't change a thing. Honestly, don't change a thing, because everything that I've been through has made me the person that I am, and it has given me the ability to talk to people in a way that I would never be able to relate to someone else. Sure, I wouldn't have wanted to put people through the things that I've been through, but God really uses all bad for His good, and if it wasn't for the bad that I did in my life, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So it would be just keep your eyes on Jesus, because He's always been there.
Amen. Okay. Dennis, that same question, that letter, as Eric mentioned.
It's definitely something deep. I had an absentee father my whole life. He chose alcohol and homelessness and things like that over the life you could live with a family, but that happens, and there's a reason for it. Like you said, God has a plan for all of us, I believe. And definitely I would say to my son, just be still and know God, know that I am God. He's the way. And I got letters in prison from my father that I'd never heard from, and all he had to say was find God. And he is so powerful. He has brought me out of this. I believe this is it. I've trying's out of my vocabulary. I'm doing just do it.
I like that.
Know? Yeah.
Yeah, move from trying to doing.
Yeah, take that out of your vocabulary, because that leaves room for failure. You know, don't do it. Don't fail, man. Just do it.
We just hope and pray the best for you with this next step and those steps thereafter. I thank you both for your time here with us today on Faith in Your Recovery, your openness. Yeah. God bless. Thanks.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
So much.
All right. Were there any other questions, Eric? Was that it, or?
Yeah, that was the only questions I had.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing those to us. And if other folks have them, make sure you get them to us here. Let me just give you a little reminder and a word of appreciation to you of how much it means to us when you tune in. And just know you can find our show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, and Google Podcast. And if we're worth your time and we've challenged your head and heart, please, we'd ask that you leave us a 5-star rating, click like, download, and subscribe. Your support will help us move forward in a way that will allow us to touch change and save even more lives. If you're interested in finding out more about a better life, Brianna's Hope, check our website at ablbh.org. We'd welcome the opportunity to share with you and communicate and see about the possibilities of one of our chapters in your community. Guys, so you know, today, November 5, begins our 8th year as a chapter.
Awesome.
So it's about, it's right along with your date of sobriety, real close, and those accomplishments. That's been neat. That website has the information you'll need. On our next episode, our guest is going to be Eric Maitland. Eric has a heart and a song for the recovery movement. His approach is as unique as any you're going to find, but as powerful as any you're going to meet. He employs different medias to get his message across. We've had the privilege and the opportunity to, share multiple times together. So before I sign off here, was there anything else there, Eric?
What email address do you want people to submit questions to?
I think it would probably be best if you would use ours at A Better Life, Brianna's Hope, and that email address is ablbh.org. So get those to us, and we will welcome those, and we'll address those in the future episodes. So don't give up on yourself. Don't give in to the urge. Your answer, your healing, your recovery may be just around the next corner, or possibly even in our next episode. Have faith in your recovery by having faith in yourself, your journey, and above all, God. Believe and keep fighting the battle.